Hi. Permission to come aboard? Thank you. I'm first one? Wow.
For those of you that don't know me, I'm Elizabeth Bain. I'm the Main Street Director here in Ripley. And we're excited to bring the Faulkner Weekend back. It's been years since we've done this. There used to be a dinner and a tour, but this is the first time that we've had a storytelling competition. So Melinda Marsalis and I went to New Albany to meet with the lovely ladies there, Billie Jean Stroud, who is the Main Street Director there, and her assistant Tracy Venisi. And we met at the museum with Jill Smith, who is the director there. And we just brainstormed and tried to think of something cool that we could do to bring this back. And so we thought, why not a storytelling competition? And we named it A Tale of Two Faulkners. And a lot of people wonder why are the parentheses around the U in Faulkner, and that's because Colonel Faulkner did not have a U in his last name, and then when his great-grandson, the Nobel Prize-winning author William Faulkner, came along, at some point he added the U. I'm not sure why, maybe made it more sophisticated, I don't know. So now, we'll go ahead and get started with the storytelling. First, I thought maybe we'd just pick somebody at random to come tell a story about maybe their childhood. If you would look under your chair to see who the lucky person is. I'm just playing. I wouldn't do that to me. I would die if somebody did that to me. So I'm going to turn it over to Melinda Marsalis, or Miss Mayor, as some people know her. And she's going to introduce all the storytellers as they come up.
We've never done this before, and I'm counting on y'all never having been to a storytelling contest before, so you won't know if we do this right or wrong. That's what I hope. This is how we're going to do it. We are going to judge. We have two professional judges down front here, and they are going to give each storyteller a score. And the categories are content, pronunciation, fluency, performance, creativity, and time management. They will be scored between 1 and 5 for a total of 30 points tops per judge, 60 points with both judges put together. They have 10 minutes. I'll give them a warning when they get to 9 minutes. We will be kind to them if they go over by 1 minute, but not over by 2 minutes. I'll start waving at them and tell them they need to wrap it up. Okay. They cannot have props. They have to tell the story from memory. They have to stay inside the time limit. Do all the contestants verify that they understand these rules? Okay. The order is going to be one professional storyteller is going to come up first and show it how it's done by a professional. Although she has already told me that she's breaking at least 3 of the rules. She's going over the time limit, she has props, and it's not totally memorized. But she's a professional, so we can't tell her not to do that. And then we'll have 3 storyteller contestants And then the second judge and professional storyteller will tell her story. And then we have 3 more contestants. And then we will wrap up with a surprise contestant at the end while the judges deliberate. Okay, the winners. The winners will win a nice bottle of William Faulkner bourbon and a pipe. There is a gold pipe, a silver pipe, and a bronze pipe at the end of the night. Everybody say a quick prayer that this goes all right. All right, here we go. To start out the night, our professional storyteller and judge for tonight's contest, Patricia Carreras, is a seasoned performer who has been working professionally in the theater as an actor, storyteller, director, writer, and teaching artist for over 35 years. She works alongside numerous artist organizations including Lincoln Center Institute, the Kennedy Center, and Wolf Trap Early Learning Through the Arts. A master teaching artist, Carreras also works with pre-K through senior adult, sharing her talents as a mime, a comic, a storyteller, and an actor in the classrooms and stages across the country. She was the keynote speaker in Tupelo, Mississippi for the Mississippi Arts Commission Winter Institute 2019 and is excited to be part of the first annual Storytelling Festival in Ripley. She feels blessed to be able to work across the nation spreading the knowledge and arts-based learning and joys of community through creativity. For her story tonight, she has an adaptation of Faulkner's A Rose for Emily, in which she will play Rose.
Can you all hear me? Yes. My name is Emily Grierson, and this is my story. I was born and raised in a smallish and large square-framed house in Jefferson, Mississippi. When I died, the whole town came to my funeral, I suppose, to see the inside of my house. The town folks say that I had been a sort of hereditary obligation to the town ever since my father had loaned money to Colonel Sartoris. And this was the town's way of paying him back by remitting my taxes. So, when the new generation came, they sent me a tax notice. And I ignored it. Then they wrote me a formal letter. And then the mayor wrote me a letter. And I wrote him a letter that said, I do not go out at all. I do not appreciate you sending me these mails. And I enclosed that tax notice without comment. A few days later, there was a knock on my door. Toby, my house servant, answered it. I did not ask them to sit. Oh, no. I stood at the door and listened quietly as they talked on and on about my taxes. And then I simply raised my hand and said, I have no taxes in Jefferson. They looked at me and said, but Missy, I have no taxes in Jefferson. Ask Colonel Sartoris. He talked to me after my father's death. He explained it all. Go see Colonel Sartoris. Toby, send these people out. And so I vanquished them, just as I had vanquished their fathers 30 years before about that smell. That was 2 years after my father's death, and about short time after my sweetheart disappeared. After my father died, I did not go out very much, and when my sweetheart disappeared, I hardly went out at all. But Toby went in and out with a market basket, and that is when the smell developed. Oh, the neighbor lady says to Judge Stevens, "Oh, you should do something about that smell, Judge." He answers, "Well, what do you expect me to do? Tell a lady to her face she smells bad?" Well, what they did was, at midnight the next night, 4 men came creeping along my lawn, sprinkling lime all over the corners and the baseboards, sniffing around. I watched them from my window, watched them as they creeped around and went out to the street. 2 weeks later, the smell disappeared. And that was when they felt really sorry for me. They said, "Oh, poor Emily," thinking about my crazy Aunt Wyatt, how she had lost her mind completely before she died, and how my father believed that no one in town was good enough for me. So they all just said, poor Emily. Well, about this same time, they started to set the sidewalks in front of our house, and with them came the construction workers. But you see, my father had been dead now for at least 2 months. What happened was, when he died, the ladies all came to my house to offer condolences, and I came to that door without a sign of grief on my face, dressed as usual, and I told them, "My father's not dead." And I did that for 3 days. The ministers and doctors would come and say, "Tell us where the body is so we can get rid of it." And finally, when they were going to call the law, I gave them the body, and they buried it quickly. But I had a right to that body. Well, the paving of the sidewalks was in that same summer. And with the mules and the machinery came a foreman by the name of Homer Barron, a Yankee, with a big voice, a big man, dark and eyes as blue and as light as his face. Oh, the little boys would travel and follow him around just to hear him cuss. Whenever you heard a lot of laughter on the square, you could be certain that Homer Barron was in the middle. And he and I were soon seen together in a buggy on Sunday afternoon. My head held high, he whistling. Well, people understand that they felt good that I had found an interest so soon after my father's death. But the older people, they said that not even a lady who's experienced grief, a real lady, should forget her noblesse oblige. And that's when they started calling me poor Emily. And once the old people started calling me poor Emily, that's when the whispering began. "Oh, look at poor Emily. Oh, look at Emily. Oh, I wonder if she could be, oh." And this behind their hands. "Poor Emily." But I had held my head up high, even when they thought I had fallen. Like when the time I bought the rat poison. That was about a year after they started calling me poor Emily. I remember walking into the drugstore, looking up at the pharmacist, saying, "I want some poison." He looked down at me and said, "Oh, yes, certainly. What kind?" "What's the best kind?" He mentioned several, and I said, "Arsenic, is that a good kind?" And he said, "Yes, but Miss Emily, I need to know what you're going to use it for rats." Well, I just looked at him. He looked at me. I had his eye for eye, my head tilted back, and then he broke it. He went away and he got that arsenic. He wrapped it up. He sent it with a delivery boy. I opened it up and it said, "For rats." So the next day they all said, "Oh, she's going to kill herself. Oh, it's for the best. Poor Emily." And then they saw me and Homer Barron the next Sunday in that sparkling buggy, my head held high, and Homer Barron hat cupped on his head, and a whip and a rein and one yellow glove. Oh. And then they thought we were going to be married. You see, I had gone to the jeweler's a few weeks earlier and purchased jewelry with HB written on each piece. I also bought a men's clothing with a night shirt. They then saw Toby open the door and let him in the back. And it was dusk and an evening. And that was the last I saw of Homer and myself for a long time. I believe they saw me about 6 months later. My hair had started to turn gray. Even at age 74, my hair has still started to turn an iron gray. Well, all I know is Toby got older too. I would not go out at all at this point. I would stand and sit in the window looking out like I did that night. And so I got sick. And I died. I died in the house downstairs on a big walnut bed with a big curtain. My head propped on a yellow pillow, which had yellowed with age and mold, lack of sunlight. They laid me out in the front room. I was surrounded by store-bought flowers and a picture of my father, crayon portrait, staring down at me. Well, the first people came, that Toby let them in. He let them in the front. He walked right through the house, went out the back door, and was never seen again. And then they started looking. There was one room in that house that had not been opened for 40 years. Well, they did. They waited till I was decently in the ground before they opened it. And when they did, such force, the whole room would shake. And what they saw was my bridle. On the dresser was the jewelry and a collar and a tie as if it had just been removed. The coat and the pants were folded on a chair. And below that, 2 mute shoes and discarded socks. And on the bed lay Homer himself. He had a fleshless grin, but it was profound. His arms were in an attitude of an embrace. What was left of him and the nightshirt had long been covered with a beautiful coat of dust. And on his pillow, next to him, was another pillow, an indentation of a head. And on that pillow was a long gray strand of iron gray hair.
I think since we're making this up as we go, we might better give, out of respect for the storytellers, I'm going to give 5 minutes until the next storyteller lets you eat in peace. speak to each other for a minute. So 5 minutes. Storyteller number 1 is Evelyn Mason. So 5 minutes telling, directing to public speaking. She loves to tell a good story from her childhood or someone else's if it sounds good. She has one son, Shane Murray, from New Albany, and a stepdaughter in Nashville, Tennessee, who has 3 daughters that claim Grammy EV, so she claims them too. Evelyn has a big laugh and likes it when people laugh with her. I have been asked to caution the storytellers to speak as loudly as possible, use the microphone. Feel free to walk around with it, keep it really close to your lips so that everybody in the room in the back can hear. See how much better that is when it's close? Okay. Okay, Evelyn.
Fear, instinct, family, and love. All of these things are in my story. I grew up on a farm, and being the oldest grandchild, I had to help out. My uncle broke his arm when I was 11 years old, and so I had to learn how to drive the tractor. Y'all, that was a lot of fun, I got to tell you. I could back the thing up, too, put it in the barn. It was good. One year, my grandfather decided that we were going to rebuild the barn. Have you ever rebuilt a barn? What you do is you take all the boards off of it, fix the post, and put all the boards back up. So, my dad, he got up on top of the roof and he put pulley systems, they had them up on the ridgeline because this barn had been standing for a long time. They had done this several times. So he got up there and he put pulleys on and we got to do the Batman thing. You know, you seen that where they pull the ropes? You know, you just walk up the side of the building. So we got to do that, and even though I was young, I could still pop boards. You know, we had a bucket for the nails, and we had a hammer, and we had a flat crowbar. And all of them were tied to a string, so that way if you accidentally dropped one, you wouldn't be chasing after her and ending upside down, which I didn't do but once. I mean, because it was very scary. So anyway, I was on the front of the barn where there weren't a lot of boards, and I got all mine popped off, and it took us all day on a Friday to get all those boards popped. Well, Saturday we go inside and we're doing the bracing thing, and my job was to take a shovel and go around the post to make sure there wasn't any holes, and if there were, to put some dirt in there. Fun stuff. Now, we raised animals, so we had pigs and cows down at Grandma and Grandpa's place, that's where the barn was, but we also had turkeys, chickens, rabbits at the house. Now, it was my job to feed these animals. Somebody asked me once, how are you able to eat what you raise? When you got to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and you get up in the rain and the cold and the heat, school days and holidays, and feed those animals, it's not hard. When you eat turkey on Sunday morning, you're like, tastes good. So, after we got the barn redone, we built a lean-to on the back of it for a pig. Now, this little pig was a runt, and the runt was pushed away by its mom and dad. I was given the little runt to raise. Now, Dad told me I couldn't name it, so I didn't. I just called her Little Girl. And that little pig followed me around everywhere I went. Everywhere. I'd show up and I'd let her out of the pen. She'd follow me while I fed the other pigs and the cows and everything. And one day, she grew up and she got to get in the pen with the boys. Well, girl meets boys have babies. Yeah, so we had some little babies coming in. I was so excited. I always sit in the pen with the hogs, and I would scratch little girl's ears, and she just loved it, and I just loved her. Well, it came time to when the little babies were to be born. Grandma and Grandpa's place was 2 miles down the road. Did I tell you that? The way we got there was by bicycle. So I come in from school one day, and Mama said the pigs had been born. So I went out and got on my bicycle after you changed your clothes, because back then you had play clothes, and you had work clothes, and you had school clothes. So I had to put on my work clothes to go down to the pen. Got on my clothes and rode down on the bicycle. I was just thinking, oh, I'm going to name this one, this one, this one, that one, this and this and that. Got there, and Daddy and my Uncle Oliver and my grandpa were standing outside the pen. They were waiting for me to get there because they were going to tell me all about it. And I was like, give me the details. And I was just waiting, and I went out to where the little pigs are, and I couldn't see because they were in the lean-to in the back of the barn. That was not happy. I wanted to go inside. Finally, Daddy relented. He said, well, we went in and checked on her earlier. There were 9 little pigs. Now, did I mention that she was a nearly 300-pound hog? Big pig. Had 9 little pigs. Gonna go inside. All right, so I go get the slop bucket, open the gate, which was not easy to do because it was just fold down on the fence. So I get in the gate, and I go inside. They're standing out there talking. And Daddy said I must have hit the bucket on the side of the barn in my haste to get there. Y'all, that pig made a sound that you would not believe. It was a scream, and then she made a holler. This is where the fear and instinct comes in. I stopped where I was and I dropped that bucket. Behind me, Daddy had vaulted over the fence. I turned around and ran. He was like, run. I'm like, yeah. So I'm running down through there, and when I get to him, he says, jump. Well, he grabs me and throws me over the fence. And he's like, run, jump, hit. I know enough by falling out of trees that when you hit the ground, you got to hit, roll, and make sure you don't get hurt real bad. So anyway, I did that, and they told me that Dad had reached on the post and was jumping back over, and that pig grabbed his breeches legs. Uncle Oliver and Grandpa were standing close enough to him that they were able to grab him and yank him over the fence post. Little girl had gotten hold of his pants. She still had him in her mouth. Have you ever seen a pig try to climb a fence? She was trying to climb that fence. She never calmed down. I asked Grandpa what happened. He said sometimes when animals have babies, they go a little crazy. And they really think it was the sound of that bucket scared her. Well, no one was ever able to get into the pen with her, even after the babies were weaned. So it was sad. I didn't get to raise any animals, and poor little things. But I tell you one thing, them pork chops were real good.
Contestant number 2, Joyce Grady, is not new to public speaking. From her first public speaking competition in 4-H as a preteen to Phi Beta Lambda's impromptu speaking competitions in college to community and church-related addresses, she talks a lot and always has. And she is not new to storytelling. Just ask her mother. A National Board Certified teacher, Joyce is a 24-year veteran teacher educating students in geography, history, business, computer classes, and STEM applications with random English class occasionally thrown in. Past state president of Kappa Kappa Iota, a national organization for educators, Joyce has spent her teaching career at Ripley High School, where she sponsors a community service volunteer program, leads the Technology Student Association, and has worked with the various school productions. Joyce is also active in the community theater program as well as the Ripley Main Street Association, where she works directly with the ambassador. This is typical Joyce biography, by the way. A lifetime resident of Ripley, she is the daughter of Doris Fair and the late Bud Fair. Married to Mo Grady for over 34 years, Joyce and Mo have 3 sons, Benjamin, Joseph, and Graydon, who are all here tonight, plus a beautiful daughter-in-law, Brooke, and absolutely most precious granddaughter ever, Harmon Grace. And just so everyone knows, Harmon Grace has already proven that talking runs in the family.
Though the battles have long ended, and the sounds of cannons and muskets have dimmed distinctly, there are some souls that are still waiting for the call to retreat, and for them, it may never come. My story begins in 1864 with the Civil War battle at Bryce's Crossroads, and it ends 150 years later. Now, we've come together tonight to honor the heritage of the writer William Faulkner, and to tip our hats to his Union and Tippah County roots. William Faulkner's great-grandfather, Colonel William Clark Faulkner, was a Ripley rebel and a sometimes resident of Pontotoc, Mississippi. While he was involved in the Confederacy, By 1864, we find him serving the war effort in a little different capacity. He was a blockade runner, headquartered in Pontotoc, because people needed supplies, even though a war was going on. They needed cotton, they needed shoes, they needed salt, they needed medicine. Well, General Sherman had the same needs. His were a slightly different way. He needed guns, he needed ammo, and he needed food. He needed a secure access to the Chattanooga and Nashville Railroad, especially if he needed to supply his Union troops. But there was a problem. That avenue was threatened by General Forrest and his Confederate cavalry. Now, Sherman needed to keep Forrest in North Mississippi, and his idea of a diversion was a battle. And his wish came true in June 1864 at Bryce's Crossroads. But it didn't end the way Sherman had planned. By the end of the battle, a count estimated at 3,000 men had sacrificed their lives, with the Union casualty outnumbering the Confederate losses 3 bodies to 1. While it was a considerable victory for the Confederacy, it proved as a perfect example of winning the battle but losing the war. Now there's another example of needing supplies that's a lot like going into battle. We call it Christmas shopping. Except you're armed with some plastic and a little cash. Now I do all of my shopping in one day. I do a little bit online, but I save the majority of it for right before Christmas, and I spend one whole day getting the things that we need and filling it up with Christmas spirit. I leave early in the morning, I have a detailed list, and I don't come home until I have everything done, usually around midnight, and I go by myself. I enjoy the whole day. I love the sounds, I love the smells, I love the lights, I love that sense of accomplishment, and I love the alone time. December 22nd, 2014 started out as much as my normal shopping day ever does. It was slightly warmer and a little rainy, but normal. I hit on my local places and then headed to Tupelo. By about 4:30, I had knocked a good deal out. Even had bought some cheap little sacks of cookies that I thought, these will be the best little happy for somebody. I have lots of somebodies in my life, so I bought 5. I checked in with my husband at about 6 p.m. and it was still raining. I told him I still had a little bit to do and not to wait up for me, and he hung up saying, I won't be looking for you anytime soon, but try to be home before sunrise. We just laughed. He knew how those trips usually went, but he had no idea how prophetic his words were going to be. I finally got to my last stop at Kohl's, got the things that I needed, made a bathroom run, checked out, and headed home. It was 11:45. Now I went the back way home, down some state highways and county roads. And about 25 minutes outside of Tupelo, I thought, I really need to check in with him. So I start fumbling in my purse for my phone. Can't find it. So I pull over. I don't have my phone. That's when I realized I laid my phone down in the bathroom at Kohl's when I washed my hands. So I turned around and headed back to Tupelo. Now the rain had stopped somewhat by then, mainly just a heavy mist. But there was a lot of water in this old road. And as I get to the T, to the stop sign, I'm braking and nothing's catching. I can't stop at all. I am on pure water and I'm headed into a field. And the next thing I know, I am in my little, Santa's sleigh loaded down with goodies, has literally lifted off, taken flight, and I am launched over the top of a ditch. Now, I landed real decently, slid, and then spun around until I slide and stop in the mud, perpendicular to Highway 370. But I'm facing the road. Great. Good news is, my car seemed undamaged and seemed to be working fine. I was just mired up in mud. And I was oddly calm for someone who had just almost wrecked and was now literally stuck in the mud at 12:15 in the morning without a phone. So I took stock of my situation and said, I don't have a phone, so I can't call anybody for help. Nobody's looking for me. And nobody knows where I am. But I do have a blanket in the back and a bottle and a half of water and 5 sacks of cookies. Now I have certainly figured out that I have all the alone time I want. So I've realized that my battery is going to go down if I continue to run my car, and it's not that cold outside, so I cut off the lights and cut off the car and just sit in the dark. And it is dark. There's a new moon that night. It is super dark, and light will pierce through darkness. And I can see a little bit of light coming through the tree line over here to my far right. It's coming from a street light, and it just filters through. It's now 1 o'clock in the morning, and I'm beginning to be able to adjust to the dark, and I look around in the field. Yep, just me, alone in a field. Or so I think. Fog has begun to roll in, and that makes sense. It's warm, wet ground, cool air. I watch the fog just drift by, quiet, soft. Weirdest looking fog I've ever seen. It's kind of straight up and down fog, with little spaces in between the cloudy parts. And being a teacher, I couldn't help but think, looks a lot like people with backpacks on, just moving past my windows. Then that's when it hits me. I'm in a field at Bryce's Crossroads. I'm in the middle of a battlefield that some people never left. This might not be fog. Paranormal experts call it ectomist. I looked it up later. Ectomist is defined as a ghost in an unusual manifestation. It's not strong enough to form an orb or an apparition, so it appears as fog. It is most likely to be found in cemeteries, battlefields, and historic sites. Well, isn't that comforting? Well, at that moment, thing is, I was oddly calm. I wasn't really afraid. I was somewhat comforted. Kind of like, I don't know, these were new friends that had come to thank me for dropping in, so to speak. Problem was, I didn't know if they were Union or Confederate. But being the good Southern girl that I am, who's been raised properly, I knew I was compelled to be polite. So I leaned up real cautiously and just said, "Hey, y'all." And because I wanted to cover all my bases, I turned to this side of the car and I said, "My people were all from South Carolina, and we are Southern to the core." And then I turned to the other side and I said, "But we think slavery is wrong and the country should be united." And then I sat back and didn't say anything for a minute before I added, "Thank you all for your service." And just like that, the fog lifted, it was gone, and a car was coming straight down the road that I had just launched from about an hour before. I jumped out of that car, got in front of my headlights, and was waving my arms like a wild woman. Sweet little girl stopped. Probably thought I was a wild woman. She called 911 for me, and an officer came. The officer let me use his phone to call my husband, who was still not looking for me at 2:30 in the morning. And about 3:30, a wrecker came and pulled me out of that field. I gave everybody a little bag of cookies as a thank you. I knew those were going to come in handy. The wrecker driver told me that my car was all right, that I would have a little mud in my tires, but it would sling out as I drove. And so I asked him, "Do you think my vehicle will be okay to go to Tupelo?" And he went, "Well, yeah, but don't you live in Ripley?" And I said, "Yeah, but my phone's in Tupelo." So off I went. I retrieved my phone from Kohl's, pressure washed my tires, drove back to Ripley, and before I went home, I stopped to get some breakfast for my family. It was 5:45 in the morning when I pulled into my driveway, and it was a beautiful sunrise. Thank you.
All right, contestant number 3. Stanley Wise is retired from Mississippi State University Extension Service. He held the position of county agent for 26 years, last serving in Union County. Stanley currently lives in the family farm established in 1926 in Pontotoc County, where he grows vegetables and row crops. He also has a pumpkin patch and a corn maze each fall, providing agricultural educational field trips for area schools, as well as fun and educational activities for the general public. Since his retirement from MSU, Stanley refers to himself as the wise farmer, a pea patch philosopher, and an educated tractor driver. He's still active in presenting educational presentations on various farm and gardening topics. His specialty is growing tomatoes in bales of hay, and he is an advocate, really? Tomatoes in bales of hay. And he is an advocate for no-till gardening, making life easier and conserving our precious topsoil. He is also a maker of corn mazes in several states. Stanley incorporates storytelling into his presentations, recalling fun and interesting tales from his growing up on a small farm and his life as a farmer and county agent. He is an amateur writer and has been known to dabble in the theatrical arts. His favorite quote is by Ralph Waldo Emerson: "To laugh often and much, to win the respect of intelligent people and the affection of children, to earn the appreciation of honest critics, and endure the betrayal of false friends, to appreciate beauty, to find the best in others, to leave the world a bit better, whether it be by a healthy child, a garden patch, or a redeemed social condition, to know that even one life has been breathed easier because you have lived. This is to have succeeded." Stanley Wise.
In October, about 100 years ago, a little church was constituted over in Union County. It's Bethany Primitive Baptist Church. Now, Bethany Church met in and I don't remember what schoolhouse it was, but they met in a schoolhouse in Union County for a long time. And then they moved to Pontotoc County, Mississippi in 1935 and built a little building. And they called a pastor named Elder J.D. Holder. And they called, Primitive Baptists called their ministers elders. And they called Elder Holder, who pastored that church for 35 years. And I grew up in Bethany Primitive Baptist Church. And that's right down the road from Shady Grove Missionary Baptist Church. And that's right on the Union County line, just across the line from Lone Star. So I was raised in both counties, Pontotoc and Union County. I went to church at Bethany. Now I'm going to explain to you a little bit about Primitive Baptists, if some of you are not familiar with those of us of the Primitive Baptist faith. But we're simple in worship. We worship, we pray, we preach, and we sing. And we do a lot of all of it. And we meet on Sunday mornings about 10 o'clock. And we sing for 30 minutes. And then the preacher preaches for at least an hour. Sometimes an hour and a half. Now, when I was young, it was an hour and a half. And down the road to Shady Grove Missionary Baptist Church, they met every Sunday. Bethany Primitive Baptist Church met once a month. But I figure we got into the Word just as much as they did, because we had a Saturday afternoon conference meeting with preaching that lasted an hour to an hour and a half, and singing for 30 minutes. And then Sunday we had the same thing. So I figured we got as much as Shady Grove did in that type of way. So I'm going to explain to you a little bit about how the Primitive Baptist Church worked. But it's just it was a small building when I was growing up. And I was about, let's just say I was 9 years old. So I'm going back to where I was 9 years old. And the building, the preacher preached from a podium. This was a podium. And on his left was the older ladies in the church. And on his right was the older gentleman in the church. And before services, before the preaching service, we had singing. And Brother Lee Wise was standing in front of the podium on the floor. And he had his book. And at that time we was using number 8 old school hymnal. Now we're up to number 12 now. But back then, was 8, okay? And he would select a number when he got time to sing. He would select a number, and we would sing that number. Now, by the way, Primitive Baptist doesn't have pianos. We just sing by shaped notes. Now, I think Brother Lee Wise was our Brother Lee Wise was our song leader. And I think he knew music, he knew shaped notes. But the rest of us just sang by letter. We just opened our mouth and let her fly. And so, anyway, after he had that opening song, he said, does anybody have a song? Woo, boy, numbers started calling. Boom, boom, boom. Well, when I got old enough, one of my favorite songs in the book was Christ Arose. That was number 10 in the old school hymnal, number 8. And just as soon as his first song was over, I would jump up and say, number 10. And y'all know how that goes. And the reason I love that song is because, it starts off, low in the grave he lay, Jesus, my Savior. And then it gets down to, up from the grave he arose. Well, I like that part a whole lot. Well, after calling that number out for probably a year, well, he says, if you like that song so much, Stanley Jr., that's what they call it, you just get up here and lead. Well, I have figured out that that's how they select song leaders in Primitive Baptist churches. If you're an extrovert and you can carry a tune, that's how they select you. So I sat up and I was his intern. And I stood beside him every Sunday morning. But you know what? About 40 years, it took me about 40 years to figure this out. I think he stood me up there so I would ask him for that song. Anyway, so I stood beside him and I led the song. Okay. Now, I'll tell you about our preacher. That's how the song went. Our preacher was a very powerful preacher. And he would, when he'd get in the spirit, he'd walk from one side of the stage to the other. He'd walk to this side, and he might go, bam, hit that podium. He might say something like, and all that the Father hath given me shall come to me, and he'd beat that podium. And that's why they call us Hard Shell Baptist Church. Not hard shells, hard shell. But anyway, he would preach, and when he'd get active, when he'd get in the spirit, it's kind of like singing something. And the God said, and we blah, blah, blah. And he would preach that good sermon, and people would love it, and they'd sit there. Well, me, I'm sitting on the front row. Now, my daddy wasn't old. So he didn't sit on the right side of the preacher. He sat right in the front. He put me with him, because if I made a move, he'd pull my ear. It's kind of the way that was. But, I figured out I loved to hear Brother Older preach simply because I wanted to see how much he was going to beat that podium when I was young. But I also loved the people. And to the left of the preacher, and to my right, the old sisters sat over there, and I'll just name three of them, and y'all may know some of them, but one of them I called Sister Lottie Whitehead and Sister Geneva Williams. Now, she talked to herself. She goes, and I would observe that because she talked all during the service. But God love her. My daddy said, don't embarrass, son. Don't say nothing to her. And I didn't. But you know, you're young and you stare, but you learn better. Well, and the other one was Aunt Della. Now, Aunt Della was a very interesting woman. Primitive Baptists are not charismatic. You know, they're not charismatic. You might hear amen every once in a while. But you're not going to hear much from the congregation while the preacher's preaching, except for Aunt Della. When Brother Holder got in the spirit, and if he hit that podium just right, she'd go, hallelujah! And I would sit there going, what's she going to do? When's she going to do that? You know? Well, when I was about 11, I grew up a little bit, and you learn to appreciate people. When I was about 11, Aunt Della, who was a loving woman, she was old when I knew her, Uncle Richard had gone, she was my great aunt. She come in one Sunday morning to church, and we're Net Hugging Baptists, and she come up to me and she hugged me. She said, son, I want you to sing number 112. Well, number 112 was I'll Live On. That was her favorite song. When you're a song leader, you know people's favorite song. She said, I'll live on. She said, son, I don't think I'll hear you sing that much longer. And I thought, okay, I don't know what's wrong, but okay, Aunt Della. And we hugged, and I went over to Brother Lee, and I said, Brother Lee, Aunt Della wants us to sing 112. He said, fine. He worked it in. Well, the preaching went on, and Brother Holder got in the spirit, and he was about 45 minutes into his sermon, and he walks to this side, and he's talking, and he walks to this side, and he's preaching. He hit that podium, and Aunt Della jumped up. Hallelujah, praise the Lord. And she sat down on the bench. When this life is o'er, and I'm here no more, I'll live on somewhere. As the days go by, as the ages fly, I'll live on somewhere. Live on, Aunt Della. Live on.
Next, we have professional storyteller and judge of tonight's contest, Rebecca Jernigan. She is an award-winning storyteller who uses her experience as an actress and playwright to bring life to classical and original literature. She has performed and offered workshops throughout the region, as well as for the DODDS schools in Europe and Iran. During the year of teaching in China, she offered workshops in drama and storytelling to augment her ESL lessons. Dr. Jernigan has served the Mississippi Humanities Council as storyteller and scholar for literacy programs in English and Spanish. Her film credits include The Client, Ode to Billy Joe, and the 2016 film Texas Heart. She was a member of the acting company of the Oxford University Shakespeare Festival for 3 seasons. She often collaborates with other artists on special projects and mentors emerging performers. Rebecca.
Thank you so much. It's so wonderful to be invited to see you and see some friends here and storytelling alive and well. I'm going to retell a little bit of a story that Dean Faulkner Wells wrote from her uncle's story, a variation of Judith. Colonel Shegog built a house on the edge of the town that was emerging, known as Oxford. There was a university there. There were bricks being formed by the hands of the enslaved people there. The Shegogs had one child, and they named her Judith. She was the apple of their eyes. She was a lovely child. And as she grew to be 13, 14, 15 years old, but throughout the land, drums and bugles were sounding, for a terrible war was ensuing. Now, on this particular day, they had heard of an awful, awful battle not far from this place, just 20 miles from Corinth. And there were so many people that had been wounded, and they were being shipped back, for the war continued on. They were being shipped by rail down to Oxford, down to Columbus, all about. And many of the dead had been thrown into graves and lime thrown over them. 60,000 fell at Shiloh and remembered in marble there. 'Tis a sad and bloody story, filled with wrongs and filled with woes. We killed more of one another than of any foreign foes. We killed more of one another than of any foreign foes. Just 20 miles from Corinth. Colonel Shegog was in Holly Springs that day as the train pulled into Oxford Station, and when the doors were open, the women who were standing there could smell the terrible smell of death. And they said to them, they said, "Women, we have here these Confederate soldiers, we're taking them up to the universities, but we have a handful of the Union boys. They too are wounded. Can some of you take them home?" And so it was that Mrs. Shegog took home a young Yankee boy. Well, they put him to rest in Judith's room. And when, after a week or two, he opened his eyes, what did he see but a beautiful young girl with flowers in her hair, holding for him broth, wiping his brow. And she told him, "You're to stay with us until you're well. My name is Judith." "Well, ma'am, I'm from Illinois. My name is Michael." "Well, then you'll stay with us, and then when you're well, they'll take you on to Andersonville. But for now, we have food for you." And so as Michael grew stronger and Colonel Shegog came back, they had invited Michael down into the living room, and there they, being hospitable as we always are in the South, they shared what they had with him. And several days, Judith would say, "Papa, can we walk nearby in the woods?" "Don't go far. You know, we have a Yankee boy, he's a prisoner of war here." And you know what was happening to the young couple. Oh, yes. They were falling deeply in love. And so one evening as they walked near the woods we know as Bailey's Woods, she said to him, "You know, if you go yonder ways and head north on up toward, you'll come on to Memphis town and maybe you can get to the river and escape. But you got to come back for me." And Michael said, "Oh, Judith, I will come back for you." And so he faded into the fog and disappeared, and Michael escaped. The war went on. The war went on. And the devastation throughout the land was felt. And finally, Whiskey Smith came to town with his torches burning up Oxford town. Well, she knew the Yankees were coming, and they had to be with her. He would come for her. She went upstairs and she got her little bag together and she put in it her little dress she wanted to wear for her wedding dress. And she waited, but he didn't come. And the bugles blew and the drums sounded and the town of Oxford burned in flames. And so Judith put on her wedding gown and walked up the steps and out onto the balcony of Roanoke. And she jumped on. And when her parents saw their beloved child there dead on the stones, they knew the heartbreak of the war. The servants and Colonel Shegog buried her under a magnolia tree, and there it is said she rests to this day. Now, William Faulkner was called Pappy by his daughter Jill, by his step-granddaughter Vicki, by my friend Kay Bryant, who came with me to tell this story for the centennial when I told a Rose for Emily, and Kay told about actually going out and seeing Pappy carve the pumpkins and put them on the doorway and gather the children around and tell them the story of Judith. And he told them to watch in the shadows, and if they looked in the crooks of the trees, they would find messages from Judith. And he wrote those messages and had those children believing in the ghost of Roanoke. 2 years ago, my granddaughter, who is now 13, sat in a circle there where Larry Wells, Dean Faulkner Wells, widower, gathered the children and his grandchild and my grandchild whom he loves. And he gathered them around and made for them a pumpkin. And he told them the story of Judith. And I do believe that it was my granddaughter's mother who faded into the woods and faded away. 60,000 fellas shining on, and remember the marble there. For you see the tragedy of that war, the tragedies that we have lived with that have scarred us and made us sometimes stronger, live on. Thank you.
Contestant number 4. June Plaxco is a Corinth native. She works at Automatic Machine Products, Inc. in the accounts receivable and logistics departments. I don't know what's wrong with me, I can't read tonight. She is a member of Mickey Primitive Baptist Church. Members of June's family have lived on the same street in Corinth for 80 years. She has collected many stories during her life, some of which she shares and some she does not.
My grandmother North was a force of nature, and she liked to have her family in a nice, tight little group. Picture, if you will, a two-legged border collie that liked to garden. That was my mama. Now, she scared a lot of people, but we got along. And we would sit on her porch swing and talk. And one summer twilight, she told me this story. Well, at least part of it. You see, my grandparents had a grocery hardware store in Corinth during the Depression and on up until the early 80s. And in the beginning, my mama stayed at home and she did all that domestic stuff that we women do. She took care of Uncle Howard and Aunt Audrey and Aunt Jean. She kept the garden. She even sewed for the public and saved every single dime that she could to help her family make a living through the Depression. And so it went until one night when my granddaddy didn't come home. Now, Mama was worried because, you see, this was the mid to late 20s, and at that time, Corinth was wide open. It was an intersection between industry and agriculture and iniquity, because downtown Corinth was just covered up with beer joints and prostitution. And their store was way down on Week Street. It was about a 20-minute walk from their house. And Mama really wanted to know what was going on, but she couldn't call him because they didn't have a phone. And there for sure wasn't a phone in the store because Granddaddy wouldn't have one because he said it distracted you from the customers. So Mama decided to take matters into her own hands. She went and she got one of Granddaddy's suits and she put it on. And then she got a pair of his shoes and she put those on too. She even put her hair up under one of his hats. And finally, she reached in the closet and she pulled out Blue Steel. Blue Steel, as you might imagine, was her favorite pistol. And looking back, I looked it up, and I think it must have been a Smith & Wesson Long Barrel 45. It was a beautiful gun. Well, for one, it was blue steel. And I used to look at it when I was a little girl in the closet, but I never touched it because she, like I, we keep our guns loaded at all times. Well, anyway, she put the gun in her pocket, and off she went. She went down Jackson Street and over to Linden Street, and then down Fillmore Street, all the way through downtown and the Sin and Iniquity, and over the railroad track to Wick Street. And she turned left and she went up a block. And she could see the lights from the store. They were still on because it was on the corner, and it was 2 stories. There was groceries in the top and hardware in the bottom. And she gets up to the store and she just knows she's going to find Granddaddy dead in the pool of blood. The door was open. So she goes in. She's prepared. She goes in. And she does not find Granddaddy dead in the pool of blood. She doesn't find Granddaddy anywhere. But what she does find is the open, unattended cash drawer. Yeah, that went over real well. So she decided she needed to expand her search. And she found him all right. He was in one of the neighboring stores playing dominoes with some of his friends. And he just hadn't noticed the time. Well, Mama retrieved Granddaddy and the deposit, and they went home. And the very next day, Mama went to work in the hardware store, and she stayed there till 1957. Although she did take 8 days off in 1931 to have my mother. Now, at that time, Mama had Uncle Howard and Aunt Audrey on kind of a loose leash. And they lived on Jackson Street, just a little bit north of First Baptist Church. And across from First Baptist Church is this beautiful 3-story red brick Victorian mansion that had been built by the Rubel family. And not only was the mansion beautiful, so was the garden. And in the house, in the garden, was this thing that Mama called a fish pond. Now, in reality, it was more like a concrete swimming pool because it was big and it was deep. To me, it looked like what William Holden died in that movie, Sunset Boulevard. Like I said, Howard and Audrey on the loose leash. But it eventuated that they made some friends that Mama didn't approve of. She just knew they were going to get Howard and Audrey off and get them into trouble because these kids did things like sneak into the Rubel garden and play around that fish pond. Mama told them, I told y'all not to be playing with those kids and going around that fish pond. And Howard and Audrey, they didn't pay any attention. And again, Mama said, I told y'all not to be playing with those kids and going around that fish pond. And they didn't pay any attention. And this went on for a couple of weeks. Till finally, one day, Mama came home a little bit early from the store. She arrived just in time to see Howard and Audrey arrive with wet feet. Well, she hit the roof because, you see, Howard and Audrey didn't know how to swim, and they could not deny what they had been doing or where they had been doing it. I told y'all not to be playing with those kids and going around that fish pond. I expect y'all to go to school and do what you're told and behave. But we weren't doing anything wrong. Oh, yes, you were. You were doing exactly what I told you not to. Oh, no. Come on, we're going to the chicken shed. What are you going to do? Are you going to whip us? Mama, please don't whip us. Come on, I'm tired of all these shenanigans. Howard, get that rope. What are you going to do, Mama? What are you going to do with the rope? Come on. We didn't do anything wrong. What are you going to do, Mama? I'm going to hang you both. But. And they did that for a minute till they got the chicken house. And picture the chickens, they're running around too. And here comes all these people invading their space. All of a sudden, Aunt Audrey blurts out, We weren't around that pond. Oh, yes, you were. You were doing exactly what I told you not to do. How do you think I would feel having to find you laying like dead fish in the fish pond? If you insist on dying, it's better that I do it. I'll make it quick. It really doesn't hurt to be hanged. Your neck just snaps. And I snap chicken necks all the time. But Mama, please, please don't do this. Now, mind you, all the time, she's tying the noose. And she throws it over the beam, and she's going on, and they're going, please, please, Mama, please don't do that. And she just keeps going, and they go on, and so finally she pauses, and she looks at him, and she says, do you solemnly swear to never, ever, ever, never go around those kids or in that fish pond ever again? Yes, ma'am. Oh, yes, ma'am. We promise we not to. No, we won't do that. She's got her hand on it. She pulls it down. And she opens up her arms. And they rush in, and she grabs them real tight. Remember, border collie. Real tight, and she leans down. And she says, I really wasn't going to hang you. But you better behave. Well, they didn't fill in that fish pond until after I was born. And Uncle Howard didn't tell me this part of the story until I was about 8. So, before the fish pond was filled in, and after he told me the story, I went to check it out. I'll tell you this, I didn't get very close, and I sure didn't tell Mama.
Contestant number 5, Kathy Garrett, lives in New Albany with her husband Mark. They have 3 sons, 3 daughters-in-law, 5 grandchildren, and 1 on the way. The Garretts have been in the restaurant business for the past 25 years. Kathy and Evelyn are dear friends, and Kathy is well aware that her deep Southern accent is nowhere nearly as pleasant as Evelyn's smooth and soothing voice. Kathy Garrett.
Dear lady judges, I would like to respectfully request that I be removed from this competition, for while I enjoy good storytelling, being judged causes me great anxiety. So I would like to go ahead and preface that. And while I'm up here saying that, I would like to publicly acknowledge Miss Ann Gaddis Cross, for she doesn't understand. Thank you. There she is. Wave again so everybody can see you. I don't know that I've ever publicly shared what impact she had on me at age 18 when in an English comp assignment class, she walked in the next day with the graded papers and said, none of you people have any talent in here except Scott and Kathy. And I thought, my life has been validated. Thank you, Miss Ann. It stayed with me for almost 40 years. Now to my New Albany friends, I apologize in advance for the salty language of this story, and the person of whom I'm speaking will be someone you know well, and I have told him the story already, so he's well aware that his name will be mentioned tonight. So, you are warned. Voting has always been a privilege and a right that I never took for granted. And I'm certain it's because it was ingrained in me from an early age when my mother used to take me to an old, musty, converted bank building where the voting booths were made out of rough-hewn 1x8s, covered in those flour sacks to give you a little privacy. And even though I wasn't able to read, my mother would not let me stand beside her. She put me to the back lest I accidentally oversee who she might be voting for. And heaven forbid, tell my daddy or share it with an acquaintance or a friend, because to discuss politics was an unforgivable sin, and to share the secret of who you voted for was scandalous and uncivilized, and you could never tell, ever, who you would vote for, nor discuss or argue about politics in any open forum. Now, I wish we could go back to those days, but sadly we're way past that. So I understand that as I got older, how important it was to take advantage of this right. And while others were excited about getting their driver's license at 16, I couldn't wait till I was 18 so I could vote. And the ability to vote was something that I took with me no matter where we moved, no matter where we went to. I would change my voting precinct and I would go or I would come back home. It was that important to me. So you can imagine, after being in New Albany for several years, when I was approached about working at the voter precinct, I was thrilled. I thought, this is the greatest day of my life. I couldn't have been more excited had I won the lottery. However, when I got there, I was taken back, because now, instead of an old converted bank building, I was in an old school auditorium with the same old musty smells, and I thought, I have come full circle. I loved everything about it. I loved the training. I loved those 14-hour days, because the polls had to open at 7, so we had to be there at 6. The polls closed at 7, so we had to stay. My husband says that I get competitive about all the wrong things, because I wanted my ballot box to be the first one back to the courthouse. That was important to me, and he said, I don't know why you get bent out about stuff like that and other things you just don't care about. I said, the voting is what matters. So I enjoyed every bit of it. I liked it that they asked me to be a closing manager, which meant I got paid an extra $10. And my husband said, look, Kathy, I'll pay you $100 if you just don't go up there. I said, no. You don't understand how much I love this, how much this means to me. So it didn't matter what we were voting on. If there were an election, I was there working it. So one particular election, I'm sitting there talking with my fellow workers. We're eating some donuts that are brought to us by our supervisor, which I thought was a little odd, because you're not supposed to do that sort of thing, but it didn't matter. The donuts were great. And my election commissioner walked in, and he said, Kathy, I need to talk to you. I said, okay, great. He pulls me to the side, and he said, listen, you got to stop being so nice to people. I went, okay, great, yeah. He went, no, I'm not kidding. He said, I'm telling you, you got to stop. I said, what are you talking about? He said, I don't want people to misconstrue your kindness as trying to influence votes. And I said, well, look, I said, most of these people I don't see except at election time. I said, so when they're coming in, I'm excited. I'm going to get up and I'm going to speak to them. He said, you can't do that. I said, and a lot of these people can't read, so they don't understand how the machine works. So I don't tell them how to vote, but if they ask me, I'll say, if you want to vote for this person, you push this button, and I walk away. He said, you got to stop. I said, a lot of these people can't read. They need assistance. He said, well, Kathy, you got to quit. And he turned around and he walked off. And I burst into tears. It broke my heart, because I had spent my entire life thinking this was the greatest opportunity afforded to Americans, is the right to vote. And he just killed my joy. But one of my co-workers, who was a dear older black lady, who was the wife of a preacher, she was about as wide as she was tall, and she wore a very fashionable hat everywhere she went. And this is what she said to me. You will appreciate this. She said, Kathy, you can't be upset about what Michael Bean said to you. Michael Bean doesn't have the love of Jesus in his heart. Now, Kathy, you and I have the love of Jesus in our hearts, and we understand what it's like to love people, and we want to show that love to people. But Michael Bean doesn't understand that. I didn't cry anymore.
Contestant number 6, final contestant of the night. Dan Shapley is the Emergency and Rural Health Clinic Services Director at Tippah County Hospital. He has been an ER and critical care nurse for 14 years. He received his Associate of Applied Science degree at Northeast Mississippi Community College and his bachelor's, master's, and specialist degrees from Freed-Hardeman University. He is a member of the Ripley Church of Christ and has been married to Michelle Peterson Shapley for 22 years. They have 2 sons, Tucker and Nicholas Shapley, and 1 daughter, Peyton Shapley. Dan is a lifelong resident of Tippah County and has been involved in various community events and activities, including the Ripley Arts Council, coaching Park League sports, and water safety instruction. He has been a teacher for over 20 years and was the accreditation liaison for Murray Regional Hospital in Columbia, Tennessee, and a SACS committee chairman for Middleton High School. He serves on the advisory committee for the Tippah County Vocational and Technical Center. He has also served on the board of Ripley Arts Council and has been an adjunct faculty instructor for Blue Mountain College and GED instructor for Northeast Mississippi Community College. Dan Shapley.
Let me begin by apologizing to the judges. I really didn't get the information or the memo on how we would do this. So I kind of was asked about a month ago to do this, and I gladly accepted. And I saw Miss Belinda yesterday about 4 or 5 in the afternoon. She said be there at 6:30, and I said, well, okay then, we'll do this. Disclaimer before I start: all the names, dates, and places I'm talking about tonight names have been changed for the sake of anonymity, and I don't want to be sued, so that's good too. Also, I have tried to reduce this from an NC-17 rating down to a PG-13, so I hope I accomplished that goal. If not, I hope you don't get offended. Let me apologize in advance. It was a stormy Friday evening. I was headed off to work. I had to be at ICU at 7 o'clock. I left early, left about 6 o'clock, raining horribly, wind blowing everywhere, and I head off to work. About halfway there, like Joyce, I hydroplaned off the road into a ditch, get every manner of fauna there is, flora, into every crevice of my vehicle. Have to call the wrecker, get them called, get them to come pull me out, get me pulled out, get me back on the road, call my nursing supervisor, say, hey, I'm going to be a little late, I've had an accident, but I'm on my way. So I get there, and I'll take a minute, look at my car, thinking, sure, to the good Lord, everything's blown off between here and there. No, looks like the Rose Parade blew up on my car. There's stuff hanging everywhere, but I didn't have time to worry about that. I had to get inside and get my report and all that good stuff. Well, I get inside, and to my chagrin, here was my nursing supervisor waiting on me, making sure I was in the right place at the right time and everything. This dear, sweet, blessed woman was about as wide as she was tall. She always wore white. She had a white football helmet for a hairdo. And I affectionately called her the abominable snow woman. Had the personality of a dish rag. And was affectionately known by most of us as Nurse Ratchet, however. I got in there. For some reason, the woman was extremely nice to me. Don't know why, because she was never nice to anyone. Went inside, said, ma'am, I'm here to get my patient assignment for tonight. She just smiled. She said, Dan, you're going to be in the ICU tonight, all by yourself. I thought, okay, well, that's all right. I'm a big boy, I can handle all this. So I did. Got in there, got my patient assignment. Luckily, it was only one man. Unfortunately, he was a very sick individual, Mr. Johnson. And I got everything prepped and ready. Lillian, the other nurse on duty, was in the mom protect room. All the other CCU nurses had been dispatched around the hospital because other people had called in or whatnot. So we had made our arrangements for the night. I get in there, and for the best of my recollection, the fact that any of us in that lady's presence, Nurse Ratchet that is, breathed, was an affront to her. You have to understand that this woman ruled with an iron fist. She came around periodically through the night to check on you, make sure you were there and doing what you're supposed to do. So all of us, when she came around, kind of whipped around and looked busy, whether we were or not. Now, as a side note, for those who don't know me, I believe in living in peace and harmony with all of God's creatures. However, both great and small. But I try to be a loving, kind, patient, compassionate person. But everyone has an expiration date on that. That only goes so far. And simply because of what had transpired prior to me arriving that night, I was at my limit, so to speak. So anyway, Nurse Ratchet, Lynette, the nurse at the time, exchanged pleasantries, and I got on with the business of patient organization assignments. Now, I should have known that something was up because Mr. Johnson was in there by himself. Now normally this is a hustling, bustling place. There are patients everywhere, there are nurses everywhere, there's doctors everywhere. But it seemed to be a holiday weekend. They try to get patients out as quickly as possible and not have anybody admitted because they don't have to come back in for the weekend. Well, I get Mr. Johnson. He's an elderly man, around 85, on a ventilator. And it doesn't look like Mr. Johnson is going to make it tonight. He just isn't. Very sad. But anyway, I get into my routine, clean him up, give him a bath, get his medications together, administer them, go through the rest of the day, the nightly charting, and try to move on with my evening. Now Lillian, who's a monitor tech, RN, she's in there watching all the monitors that's going on throughout the hospital, making sure everybody's heart's still beating. She comes around, and she's not much help of anything to anyone, but she likes to tell you how to do your job. So I graciously accepted Lillian's help for the 2 minutes she was there, and allowed her to go back to her monitor tech position and check out all the rhythm strips and the rhythms that were going on that night. However, I became increasingly aware that I was there by myself in a 12-bed unit with a man who's about to die. Okay? Big boy, I can handle this. So, anyway, I went on about my business, doing other things. Respiratory therapists came in, other therapists came in, did their thing, got everybody settled, or him settled rather, and it began. Now there's something in the ICU that we rarely talk about. And it's this phenomenon called Hank. Hank comes around before people leave. I personally, when I called him Hank, I would call him something innocuous like Clarence, or Udale, or Curtis Wayne. When I think of a person named Hank, I think someone will stand in the middle of a road with an axe. I just wouldn't name him that. But anyway, out of the corner of my eye, here comes Hank. And Hank comes in the form of or the rustling of the curtains as he comes around this circular room. And generally, he's in, and not too far after that, not too long after that, someone expires. It just happens that way. And believe you me, I've checked. I probably know the ductwork in that ICU better than most of the maintenance men because I want to know why that happened. What causes that? Because that can't just be what I thought it was. But it is. So anyway, I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden, out of the corner of my eye, I see the curtains begin to move. Now this is a closed unit. Each ductwork is individual to each person's room. So there's no chance of when the air conditioner comes on, the swoosh comes around because it takes the air that long to do that. It just doesn't happen. Everybody has their own thermostat. Nurses station has their own thermostat. It just happens that way. Well, then it begins. And the curtains move. And this is a circular room, so I'm turning around, watching these curtains go all the way around the room until it gets to room 247, Mr. Johnson's room. And it stops. And I think, dear God. They have left me empty. And this man is going to die. So I go back to my desk. I begin charting, watching that monitor religiously. And all of a sudden, sure enough, every alarm bell possible in that unit goes off. And it's loud. It wants you to know something is wrong. So it takes off just getting on the I'm about to have a bowel movement. I get up, grab the crash cart, run to the man's room, hit the code blue button. People come running from every direction. I start compressions just to get it. Now, I'm not in the best shape in the world. So after about 2 to 5 minutes of this, I'm spent. I'm thankful that somebody else is coming in. Please, dear God, they can come in. So I do. All the doctors and nurses from other floors come down. We're treating this man, giving him epi and atropine, left and right, bicarb, trying our best to keep him alive, and it's just not going to happen tonight. Mr. Johnson passes. Well, I'm the only one in there, they all leave. So it's my responsibility to clean up the body, remove the lines, tubes, and drains, bandage what needs to be bandaged, position the body, and get everything ready in case the family wants to come back and view the body. Well, the family had been at the 8 o'clock visitation period, and they had left, and they're not from the area. So I wasn't really expecting to come back, but it could happen because I had to notify them that this had taken place. I tried my best to get everything done, cleaned up, ready, presentable, and then I have to call down to the central supply for a body bag because we have to prep them, get them ready for when a funeral home comes and picks them up. So I call Central Supply, and Aretha answers the phone. Now, Aretha is a phenomenon unto herself. She is probably one of the smartest women I've ever met in my life. She can tell you the vendor, the serial number, the model number, anything and everything about every piece of equipment, every supply we have. In that particular hospital I was working that night, anything and everything. But Aretha has a strong character, shall we say. Aretha loves men. She loves all men. If they're breathing, standing upright, Aretha loves you. And so, I said, Aretha, it's Dana. I need a favor. I need a body bag. Do what? Aretha, I need a body bag. You want me to bring you a body bag? Yes, Aretha, I can't leave. I'm the only one here. Would you please bring me a body bag? Ooh. The Lord is my shepherd, and He knows what I want. Aretha, I don't need scripture spouted to me right now. I want a body bag. Could you please bring me a body bag? Yes, I'll be up there. So anyway, about 5 minutes later, Aretha comes up. She brings the body bag, and she hits the buzzer in the intercom outside. I said, hello? She says, Aretha with your body bag. I said, oh, Aretha, I need you to come in and bring it to me. Oh, no. I don't do dead people. I'm Central Supply. I said, well, supply yourself on in here and help me. Because I'm the only one in here and I need you to get up and help me. Get in here and help me with this. I said, you don't have to do anything. The only thing I need you to do is help me to pull him up in the bed. I've got him all ready. I just need the bag. And the person from the funeral home will come and assist me to put him in it. That's the only thing you have to do. I don't do that. Aretha, I realize you don't do that. You don't feel comfortable with that. And you're not a clinician. Okay, whatever. I just need 2 hands right now. Help me pull him up in the bed. Okay. But I don't want to. I said, all right, Aretha, I understand, ma'am. So she comes in and she's going, Lord, I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. I shall fear no evil, for thou art with me. And Dan. I said, yes, Aretha. Come on, now just help me. So we get in there, and the man, we have to fold his arms up to get him pulled up with the draw sheet. And well, he kind of slumps over, and when he does, the right hand falls over the side of the bed and hits Aretha. Well, Aretha screams, oh Jesus. And that's the last I see of her. She didn't stay around for the Lord to answer her anything. She was gone. So she is left. I'm left there beside him, trying to hold him on the other side to make sure the other hand doesn't drop. Well, sure as the world, I turn to look at the monitor, and boom, the hand hits me. Now, I was taught not to use foul language, but now I dropped the F-bomb, and I did so vigorously to the point where everybody heard it, even Mr. Johnson, I feel like. But anyway, so I get in there, get him situated, and out Aretha's gone, and I go back to my station there. Doing the paperwork, filling out the certificate of death, yada, 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 filling out this and that, all the paperwork, contacting the family, getting them situated, asking whether or not they want to come back and view the body before the funeral home picks it up, all of these different things. Well, in the meantime, I get a call from the ER that I'm getting a patient. In ICU, it's 1 nurse to 2 patients. And this is a regular that's coming up, so I know all about this lady. Very, very colorful lady. Elderly woman, probably around 90 years old, and lived a very strange and unique life. Said that she got to Mississippi from New Jersey by way of her son had married a Southern girl. He was Italian, she was Italian. I thought that was very strange because she spoke perfect Southern aristocrat lady dialect, you know. Just everything was this and that and blah and blah. But anyway, so she comes in and get her settled, fill out her paperwork, do my initial assessment, talk to her a little bit. And part of all this is a psychiatric evaluation, just a mini one, something the nurses do to kind of get a feel of where someone is, what they're doing, how they're thinking. Now this is about the 20th time I'd taken care of this woman. She was a regular. Dr. Livingston, shall we say, this was one of her pet patients. She didn't necessarily need to be in the ICU. She just wanted, she liked the ratio. One nurse to 2 people. You know, you were a personal concierge for her. So she liked that. And I understood that, and that was fine. We petted on her, loved her. But like I said, a very colorful character. One time she had told me that she always wear a scarf. She said that there's 2 things. There's 2 things that you can tell about a woman in order to tell her age. And I don't want to be seen about any one of those 2 things. I said, well, Miss Julie, I call her Miss Julie. I said, well, what are those? She said, the scarf around your neck. A woman should always wear a scarf around her neck at my age. And gloves. She should always wear gloves. You can always tell a woman's age by her hands. Okay, whatever. Anyway, she proceeded to tell me about her life and things that she had encountered. Now, I wasn't too sure that what she was telling me was a made-for-TV movie or for real. Because she also told me her son was from New Jersey, married this Southern girl, and I didn't really see him hiding the hair off him or her. So I didn't know if, you know, altered mental status, COPD, maybe the altered mental status had kicked in. So she began to tell me a story and give a story about her life. She said, I was having an affair with a man in Arizona one time. She said, and I had to leave him because I eventually found out that, well, he was married, and I didn't do that sort of thing. I said, well, okay, Miss Julie, that's fine. Anything else you'd like to share? Yes. And he was a murderer. I said, really? What happened? She then got my curiosity piqued at that point. I said, what happened? She said, I was seeing him in Arizona, but he had told me to meet him in Seattle for a rendezvous. I said, yes, ma'am. So what happened? She said, so I did. She said, of course, I didn't know he was married at the time. But when I arrived in Seattle, I did a little background check. Apparently, he had murdered his wife with a scarf around her neck. I said, wow, Miss Julia, that is crazy. What did you do? She said, when I got to my hotel room in Seattle, there was a scarf in the prettiest box you'd ever seen, laid across my bed in our hotel room. I said, what did you do next? She said, then I ran away. I ran away so fast I didn't know what was happening. I was scared. I was scared to death. I had learned that he had murdered his wife, and I was afraid that scarf was for me. I said, Miss Julie, why in the world would you wear a scarf then? She says, well, the lady always does what she has to do. She pulled on that scarf, and I knew right then I was not dealing with a full deck. I had not been dealing with a full deck. This woman was likely untruthful to me from the beginning. However, she was a colorful person. I settled her into bed, put her oxygen on her. No sooner I got back to my desk than I saw the corner of my eye, the longest Virginia sling you'd ever seen. She lit that thing up and let it burn until I got to her room. I said, Miss Julia, what are you doing? You're going to kill yourself. She said, no, I'm not, darling. I'm already dying. What does it matter? I said, well, it matters to me. You people are always so particular these days. I said, well, you're going to be particularly crispy if you continue to smoke that cigarette and stay with that oxygen on. Well, let's put that out. So I did. We put it out, and I got busy doing some other things. About that time, the telephone rang. It was Mr. Hildebrand. I didn't know Mr. Hildebrand from Adam's house cat. But he had called. He said, I need to speak to someone. My wife was discharged last night, and I need to know if I have a VAB. I said, Mr. Hildebrand, what are you talking about? I said, I can't really give out any personal information about any patient. It's against the law. He said, well, I need to know it's important. I said, Mr. Hilbrand, what's important? He said, I need to know if I've got a VAD. I said, were you in the hospital? Are you talking about a venous access device? He said, I guess, I don't know. My wife just come home and said she had a VAD, and I want to know if I had a VAD too. I said, well, Mr. Hilbrand, I can't tell you anything about her condition or anything about that, but now I'll try to help you, but I just can't right now. I'm busy. I've got some things I need to do, and I didn't even know how the man got my number and how he reached that particular floor, but he did. So anyway, on I go throughout my night. In comes, about 15 minutes later, Nurse Ratchet. She comes in there, scowl on her face, ill disposition as usual, and she wants to know what I'm doing. I said, well, right now I'm taking care of a dead body and a crazy woman. What you doing? She said, well, I just come to check on you. I need to make sure everything's in order. I said, yes, ma'am, I've got everything in order. Everything's just fine. About that time the phone rings again. It's Mr. Hilbrand. Dan, I need to know, do I have a VAD? I said, Mr. Hilbrand, I can't help you with that. And I don't know exactly what you're talking about. If you weren't here the other day and we didn't put one in, you don't have one. You don't. And then it finally dawned on me, he was talking about an STD. I thought, Mr. Hilbrand, you don't have a VAD. Do you have an STD? He said, I don't know, what is that? I said, well, an STD is a sexually transmitted disease. Did my wife give me that? I said, no, sir, she did not. She got a VAD yesterday. Well, can I get it? Not unless we operationally implant it in you. No, you can't get it. There's no way you're going to get a VAD. Now, I don't know what you're talking about, but I cannot diagnose you over the phone. You're going to have to either be seen in the clinic or come to the doctor to find that information out. Just do that. Just do that. Put yourself at ease. Please go ahead and make yourself a point. Okay? That seems to take care of him for a little while. Well, anyway, in comes one respiratory therapist, comes in, talks with Miss Julia about her condition, and then out she walks. Out he walks, and Miss Julia's back to rambling again. She said, Dan. I said, yes, Miss Julia, yes, Miss Julia, yes, Miss Julia. What is it that you need? I need a Diet Coke, and I need you to let me finish that cigarette you put out a minute ago. Miss Julia, I can't do anything but the Diet Coke. I'll be glad to do it. Let me get it for you. I did, went back to her room. She rambled on about 15 more minutes, and then Mr. Hilbrand called back. I said, this is Dan, can I help you? This is Mr. Hilbrand, I need to know if I've got an STD. Mr. Hilbrand, I can't help you with that. I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about. Just call the ER. Go to the ER. If you're that concerned about it, make an appointment. Go to the ER. Get back to my course of action here, and in comes the mortician, the funeral director. Now, he's a small man, smaller than me. He comes in, he looks at Mr. Johnson over there, he looks at Miss Julia over here, and he wants to know what I'm doing talking on the telephone. So I motion him to come in, let him come in, and I assist him in getting the body. Well, we get the body bag under the gentleman, being placed in the body bag, zipped about halfway up, and the man's right leg moves. Now, it happens. It does. Sometimes when you feel somebody with too much epinephrine or too much atropine, occasionally after they've been dead a while, they'll just jerk. The man jerked. And then he did it again. And then I got scared. And then I called Nurse Ratchet, which I did not want to do. Last thing in the world I ever want to do is call it one again. Anyway, so she comes up and said, I hate to bother you, Lynette, but I need you to help me with something. She said, what is it? What do you need? I said, just to be on the safe side, I'm going to run another rhythm strip, and I'm going to get you to check a pulse. When you get nervous and you get scared in a situation, sometimes you put your hand on somebody, and just for the pure fact that your heart is beating so fast, you will feel a pulse when there's not one in the tips of your fingers. Reach down, put my hand on this femoral artery, and there it was. Thump, thump, thump. I shouted another obscenity in the presence of Nurse Ratchet. She looked at me and she said, what are you doing? I said, I'm gonna need you to back me up on this. She put her hand down there. Nothing. Until there was. And there was one big thump. She and I unzipped that thing. We hooked the man back up to every monitor we could find. Nothing. Nothing. Wasn't a thing going on with that man. He'd been dead for about 45 minutes at this time, yet we still felt the thump. Now there is a thing called spontaneous, return of spontaneous circulation. That does happen in certain situations, especially when you have epinephrine in the body and things of that, those drugs of those natures. That happens. But the person's gone. They've had no oxygen in their brain for 20, 40 minutes. We had all the proof we needed the man had passed. Yet there was, at that time, a thump. Got all of our equipment back out, double checked, just to make sure, and sure enough, like we knew he was, he had been dead. But the look on Nurse Ratchet's face when she felt that thump was the sweetest revenge I had ever had.
Okay, this will be hard for the judges to decide. There's so many good storytellers. And we knew that. We wanted to give them a little time to think. So we have one final storyteller. It was supposed to be Jack Elliott, who is your tour guide. I hope that you'll come tomorrow to the library at 10 o'clock. Jack Elliott is going to guide you around historic Ripley. He's going to show you the houses that factor into the Faulkner story. He's going to show you how all of William Faulkner's writings come right back to Ripley. He is an awesome storyteller. I wish he were here tonight, but he's not. We have a surprise guest, and I'm going to read his biography to you. Tonight we have a special visitor, Professor William Windsor, LLB, an expert in phrenology. He is here to give his insights into the birth of the Faulkner literary tradition at Ripley. Professor Windsor has just returned from Europe, where he has spoken before royalty and anyone with the price of a ticket. His popular books include The Science of Phrenology, along with How to Be Rich and How to Be Healthy and Handsome, along with his book of interplanetary life, Loma, a Citizen of Venus. Now, I will say to you that Mr. Elliott called me this afternoon, and he wanted me to say to you, I know this Professor Windsor, and I know what he has to say, and I say that he is a fraud and a bald-faced liar. So you guys are going to have to decide if Professor Windsor has a chance to redeem himself tonight.
I know it's not fortuitous that Mr. Elliott's not here tonight. I'd like to see him say that to my face. Bald-faced liar. Tonight I've come to speak on the subject of phrenology and the history. I really don't tell stories. As a matter of fact, I got disqualified in several ways. That's why I'm not a regular contender. Melinda said that if you're going to compete, you can't have any props. Well, I can't do anything without my artifacts, the telephone and such as that. So I've got a few items up here that we're going to use, and I'm going to bring in my helper, my wife. Lilla Winston is here. She's as renowned a phrenologist as I am. She calls herself the queen of phrenology. Phrenology is the science that detects behavioral patterns to the configurations of the cranium, like little bumps and everything that are indicative of certain pathologies and inherited moral idiocy and such as that. I got this at the Silver Springs liquor store in Ripley. I've been driving all the way up here for some years to get my Jack Daniels. It always tastes better at Silver Springs. This is where they have the bourbon tasting contest tomorrow. They won't let me participate in that. Somebody rather tactlessly said that son of a bitch might drink it all up. But anyway, I know if I was in the bourbon tasting contest, I know what the winner would be. Old number 7. Some of y'all might think that I got this idea from Ron White. Have you ever seen Ron White drink Jack Daniels? We got another prop coming up. My wife is going to come up here and I'm going to talk about phrenology. Now, one of the big things I'm talking on is the origin of the Faulkner literary tradition in Ripley and how it dates back to a murder and the ensuing execution in Ripley in 1845. It gets back to a fundamental principle in human existence, that appearances are oftentimes underlain by a deeper, darker reality. So what you see at the surface isn't always what you get. Look at Lila here. She doesn't look too deadly or anything. Look at the crowd. She looks fairly harmless. If you look at the bumps on her head, it's nothing particularly disturbing up front. But in the back of the head, oh boy, troubling signs, pathological behaviors. You might ask, if you notice these pathologies in the back, why did you marry her? You know, when we were dating, she had a bouffant hairdo. And it'd come up and everything, and it hid those bumps. And then after we got married, I spent $50 to get married, and that night I discovered these telltale signs that there was a deeper, darker reality there and everything. And when I saw that, you can imagine how much I wanted my $50 back. You might ask, well, aren't y'all coming up on your 40th wedding anniversary? How did it manage to go so long if you're married to a pathological maniac? I said, well, she's not too bad most of the time, and I just don't leave butcher knives lying around the house. And that's pretty well solved all problems. Okay, that's an introduction to phrenology, these bumps and everything. If you see the signs, it reveals a completely different character than you oftentimes get. Swinging of phrenology. I'm here tonight because of one of the most well-known citizens of Ripley, Tommy Covington. Melinda, when she was mentioned that I was just returned from Europe, where I went on a lecture tour, and I was coming back on a Queen Mary II, and I met Tommy Covington, nice fella. Anyway, I gave my phrenology lecture and had one of my skulls there. This is the skull of Andrew Jackson McCannon, murderer of the Hadcock family, who was hanged in Ripley on November 1st, 1845. Now you look at this, Tommy saw this skull, and immediately the story clicked with him, and so we had something in common. And he wound up inviting me to come to Ripley to speak on his skull. So that's why I'm not here to tell a story. I'm expounding on this particular individual and its impact upon the Faulkner literary tradition. But Tommy saw the skull and he said, "What a nice man. He looks like such a nice person." And I said, "Well, he looks like it kind of, but you see, look at that up on the parietal lobe. There's a real problem right there. That's a killer." Well, Tommy, as it turns out, it was kind of interesting when I ran into him. He said he was on the way back from Africa. He said he's down there hunting tigers with Paul Rainey, somebody that lives around here. Is Mr. Rainey here tonight? I've always wanted to meet him. Well, anyway, I'm here because of Tommy and his invitation. the story of look into Andrew Jackson McCann. This goes back to summer of 1845 when family of Beverly Adcock was traveling from Pontotoc up to somewhere up around Jackson, Tennessee, and he came up what's now Highway 15, New Albany, Ripley. Somewhere along the way they met, the Adcock family met McCann. And they thought, he's a nice man because he gave candy to the children. Well, Linda, don't you think he looks like a nice man? Even offer you candy? You know, he has little kids. The Adcocks had 2 kids. There was man and wife, Beverly and Paralee Adcock, the mother-in-law, Sarah Adcock, and 2 small children. And then there were 2 slave boys, an 11-year-old named Cook and a 10-year-old named Abe. And they were on their way up into Tennessee when Jackson got in with them. He had a lot of candy. Big hit with the kids. They call him the Candy Man. The Candy Man. Boys, it's a Candy Man. He's got some candy for you. And he rode along with them. And as he got up on almost on the Tennessee line, the Candy Man suggested that we better stop before we cross the Tennessee line. Let's camp here on the bank of Bearman Creek. We got a water supply. And there that night, after everybody went to sleep, the Candy Man pulled out an axe and he chopped off the heads of the adults. And then the Candy Man got a butcher knife and killed the 2 children. This was a June 8th night. They laid there the entire next day, June 9th. They weren't found until June 10th. By that time, hogs had found them. A lot of people think that hogs are herbivorous. Hogs are not herbivorous. Hogs are omnivorous. They'll eat meat and plant foods. They had largely consumed a lot of this family. They'd been out there for 5 days. Matter of fact, they couldn't even find the body of one of the kids there. They just buried them in a common grave there just above Bearman Creek, northern Temple County. Well, when they found them, you can imagine the outrage at this. Anyway, they created a posse and went up, chasing him up into going up into Tennessee, Jackson. Got to Jackson, people there reported seeing him come through with the wagon. They said he was really moving along, him and 2 little slave boys. And then he got about 15 miles outside of Jackson when they caught up with him. They brought him back to Ripley. They almost lynched him, but the law held out against them. They tried him October 3rd. They tried him all day. There wasn't any evidence in his favor. The jury, at 7 o'clock, they went into recess, came up with a guilty verdict after 10 minutes. During the trial, Jackson was very contrite, they said. He begged for mercy and everything. He admitted his guilt. He said he'd tell his story to anybody. They put him in prison waiting his execution in a month on November 1st. While he was in there, young Bill Faulkner, who's 20 years old, came in there, was allowed to get in there. It's pretty easy to do. His uncle was a former U.S. congressman, and another uncle was a district attorney. So it's pretty easy getting access, but he interviewed him a number of occasions and wrote down a narrative of this, of the admission of Jackson. He called it The Life and Confession of A.J. McCann, murderer of the Adcock family. And he took it up to Memphis, got it published. Now, if this sounds kind of familiar to you, remember in 1959, Richard Hickok and Perry Smith in Kansas broke into the Clutter family in Kansas' house, killed 4 of them, and they were later on tried and executed. In the meantime, Truman Capote interviewed them off and on and came out with what he called In Cold Blood. He said it was a non-fiction novel, which is kind of an oxymoron there. Novels are by definition supposed to be fiction. But Capote got his idea from Faulkner and tried to hide it in such as that. On the day of the execution, Faulkner had about 2,500 copies of this little booklet published, and he was selling them on the square where thousands of people had gathered to see the execution. Well, they brought the guy over from the jail and they had him on a cart. They didn't have a gallows. You know, you're used to thinking of a hanging being, you get up on a gallows and you drop 5, 6, 7 feet and it snaps your neck. Well, you didn't have a gallows. They basically let you swing. So they had him on the cart. They're going to let him swing, pull the cart out from under him so there'd be no drop, so he would just hang there and strangle. Well, it turned out to be kind of a real freak show almost out there with, there was a preacher up there talking, and they gave, what was so bizarre is they had the reading selected by McKenna, this particular Bible reading, and then he up there and denied that he ever did it. Meanwhile, I wonder if in the crowd, a lot of people were saying to Faulkner, I want my $1 back. He's saying he didn't really do it. Anyway, this laid down a basis of looking at what went on behind the appearance. The old friendly candy man going out giving candy to the kids and everything was really just a pathological murderer. But there on the courthouse square in Ripley, November 1st, 1845, that is the date and place when the Faulkner literary tradition began. This is the face that launched 1,000 novels and assailed the topless towers of literary aspiration. The skull of A.J. McKenna. What's the reality behind this?
All right, I have Vanna to help me here. Cheryl, Vanna. All right. After much deliberation, we have 3 winners. Third place, the bronze pipe. That's right. Goes to Miss June Plaxco. Second place, the silver pipe, goes to Miss Joyce Grady. And the winner of tonight's contest goes to Miss Kathy Garrett.